Hi everyone, my name is Claudia and I'm with Time for Stamping. You can find my blog at timeforstamping.com. The 4 is the number 4, so keep that in mind if you're looking for timeforstamping.com. Today I wanted to show you a special card I made with the new Jolly Holly stamp set. Actually a bundle, some cute little images as well as some nice sentiments with some kind of fun fonts on them. Comes with a nice die set, which includes a couple of stitched rectangle dies, as well as this all over kind of holly background die. Now that actually, this is a hybrid embossing folder. As you can see, it embosses some real cute little images of holly and some little dots in the background. But this also fits onto the embossed images like that. So once you emboss this, you can put this on your paper, your embossed paper, and cut that out. Or you can even put your paper down and fit this over this like that. Your paper would be between the die and the embossing folder, of course, and run that through your machine. That way you're killing two birds with one stone. Personally, I like embossing first and then cutting, but that's just my preference. If you want to cut out that step, you can do it all at the same time. Okay, let me show you the card I wanted to show you today. Isn't this beautiful? It's made actually with all of the holly leaves that you can cut out with this, and I just formed them into a wreath. Use this cute little bell image and the joy. Now this set actually comes with a joy die, as you can see here, and it cuts out a little joy like this. I used real red for that. Or if you happen to have the paper pumpkin add-on, which is called Abundant Joy, it was the October 2025 add-on kit. It also comes with a joy cutout that looks like this. Okay, so it's your choice. If you don't have the add-on, you can always use this one. I happen to use the add-on for this, so I'll maybe use the other one on the card that I make today just to shake it up a little bit. Okay, so let's put these aside for a minute. And again, let me show you the card. Now, if you can see the background here, I embossed the white with the embossing folder, and then, as I said, I embossed a piece of Season of Elegance specialty paper, embossed it with the folder, and then cut all the leaves out and used that to form my wreath. Now, the Season of Elegance paper has these foil splotches in it, which really jazzes up the card a bit. Okay, so let's get started here. There's really not much stamping with this, but I have a base of real red. Now this is 8.5 by 5.5, and it's scored at 4 1/4. Just want to crease that. Okay, and as I said, my first layer is actually a piece of basic white, and this is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And you can see how pretty that looks with that embossed folder on there. So let's just go ahead and add that to the card front. Now I like to use Tombow glue. Many people don't. They prefer to use a tape runner, in which case Stampin' Up! Sells the seal. Or if you have another type of runner that you prefer, of course you can use that. Okay, so I'm just going to set this aside for a minute, and I want to show you, this is a piece of designer paper, and I've actually already embossed it, if you can see the little leaves on there, and put the die on there. Now, the thing about this die is it does not cut out the leaves completely. It leaves them like this so that if you wanted to put this on your card and just kind of pop these up a little bit just to give it some dimension, you can do that without getting rid of the background, okay? But for this card, I just wanted to use the leaves. So all this takes is a couple little snips here and there. They're mostly cut out. You just have to finish snipping. There's maybe 2 or 3 spots that are connected. Like this one had 3 spots. So you can see how pretty, isn't that beautiful? See how pretty the holly leaves look with that. Let me see if I can push this light up here a little bit closer. Okay, so I'm just going to cut out all these little holly leaves here. And as I said, they're just connected by one or maybe 2 or 3 little places that you need to snip. And you have your pretty holly leaves. Now I've chosen this particular designer paper, Season of Elegance, just because I do like the little bit of gold foil in here just for a little added elegance. But if you prefer to use any of the green colors, such as Mossy Meadow or Old Olive, or what else have we got? Shaded Spruce, Garden Green. Any of those pretty green colors would be perfect for this as well, if you don't happen to have this. This is current designer paper, specialty paper they call it. And it actually comes in a pack with 3 colors. There's this green with the gold, and then there's reds with the gold, which I believe is like real red and cherry cobbler. And then there's also kind of a beige, which is like beige and maybe very vanilla. And they all have these little splotches of gold on them, which really, really does make it quite elegant looking in person. And as I said, they're just connected by a few little pieces here. So it's very easy to snip these off. And then you've got yourself some pretty holly leaves to work with. Now the other side of this specialty paper is the same color, only it does not have the gold on it. So if you were to look at this, it's kind of this particular shade of green. There's like Old Olive and Mossy Meadow in here. So if you wanted to just use that and not have the gold, this is kind of what it would look like. Okay. But as I said, I think I really like this gold for the Christmas card. Now, when you're embossing and cutting these out, if you notice let me show you the die again, you have some unfinished leaves here, and that's the way the embossing folder is too. So rather than throwing these out, you can just use these, cut these out, and use them as a single leaf, since it doesn't have both leaves attached. Okay, so I got a couple of single leaves I can cut out here, and even on this little one, cut that out. Now this was right at the edge, so you see kind of a straight edge there, so we can just go ahead and kind of cut that around the holly leaf, and you're still good. Now this one here will just be a single leaf again. Very easy to cut out. And you can use those just to tuck in where you may need an extra little extra bit of color or foliage in there. So I do like to cut these out and save them just in case I need that. And again, this was right at the edge, so I have a straight edge, but I'm just kind of cutting around the holly leaf. And I believe that is all. Okay, so let's put that aside. So now I have all these pieces to play with. And we can go ahead and just start building Now, as you notice, some of these leaves are bigger. They have like 4 or 3 larger leaves in them. Some are kind of medium size, some are smaller. So you just have to play with this and see what looks best to you. Now, in my opinion, putting the larger leaves on the bottom kind of looks more balanced to me. So that's what I'm going to do here, and I'm just going to arrange these sort of in a circle before I glue them down. Let me pull you in just a little bit closer. There we go. And let's see. As you can see, some of the leaves have a little bit more gold on them than the other. So you can arrange those which direction you like those to appear. This one has almost all gold in it. I'm going to actually put this one at the top like that. Use a little bit more gold up there. Here's another one that has 3 leaves, and this one has 4. So now, as you can see, we're just kind of roughly arranging these in a circle. And because, like I said, these are bigger down here, and it looks kind of unbalanced because we've got smaller leaves up here and the larger ones here. So that's where these extras come in that you can just kind of tuck in here and there to balance out the heaviness at the bottom. And it kind of equals it out a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Now, again, I'm using Tombow glue, just my personal preference. Just tucking some of those in. Kind of overlapping a little bit. Just keeping it in a nice circle to form my wreath. Now you can overlap or put some under, some over, whichever way you'd like them to look. And one of the reasons I like to use the glue rather than the tape runner is that you have a little bit of wiggle room here if you want to rearrange these just a little bit here, rather than once you have those tape runners down, if you try to pull them up, you're pretty much stuck. Okay, like this one, I want to turn just a little bit so I can reposition that. Put that one like that. Okay, so I have my basic circle, my basic wreath there. Now I have all these little pieces I can add. Now these actually have the little double leaves on them. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of tuck them here and there. Here's another one that has 2 leaves. So we'll put that one over here. Just tucking it under a little bit. And you can see how that's starting to balance out the heaviness over there. Here's another double leaf that I have. So I can maybe, let's see. Where shall we put this? Let's see which looks best. What you want to do is just kind of play around here. Now I kind of like that one like there. So each card you make, you can actually make them all a little bit different. They're the same but different. Same design, but each looks a little bit different because we have different ways that we're going to lay them down. Okay, so let's put that one like that. Got a couple more here. Let's see. Now this one you can see it was just square at the bottom here, but I can go ahead and tuck that under here. And maybe this one. Let's see. Does it look better there? I think so. Okay, that's the way I like it. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue these down. Put all of those down. And you can see this really takes no time at all to do this. Okay, so now I have a pretty wreath here. I'm going to rearrange this one just a little bit. Pull that over Just a little. There we go. Okay, so I have my basic wreath done. And now what I want to do is stamp a nice little set of bells to put at the top. So I have just a scrap of basic white, and I'm going to use Versamark and emboss it with gold, and that'll just tie in very nicely with the gold in the holly leaves. And as you know, the Versamark is clear and sticky. So there are my cute little bells. And I'm just going to heat those up and get that all melted. Okay, you always want to make sure when you emboss, take a good look at it and make sure that everything is melted, that you don't have a little bit of powder left over. Now you can either use the die to cut this out now, or you can go ahead and color it however you like. And I'm going to choose to color. So I'm actually going to use my dark Daffodil Delight for the little, I think those are clangers or whatever they're called. The little thing that makes the noise in the bells. Do that, and then use the light shade of Daffodil Delight to color the other part of the bell, both kind of the inside and the top part. And I'm leaving that little stripe on the bell to color with dark real red. Okay, and that really brings out the bells, the yellow in the bells, and then we'll color the bow with the dark real red as well. Now if you'd prefer to use your watercolor markers, the Stampin' Right markers, or even just watercolor this, you could do that. I like mine nice and bright. That's why I'm using the blends. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. There's the die that matches that perfectly. So let me cut that out. Okay, so I have my little bells, and it moved just a little bit there, so I'm just going to go ahead and snip this off. I forgot to bring down, I usually use a Post-it note to hold my die in place just to make sure it doesn't move, and I forgot to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim this so that it looks a little more even with the other side. There we go. Okay, so now all I have to do here is put this up on a couple dimensionals. Put one up here and a couple smaller pieces here. I'll just snip off a couple small pieces and use them on the bottom. Yep. And a little trick, if you don't already know this, if you're having trouble getting the backing off, just use your fingernail or thumbnail and press it in, and the edge will pop right up. If you don't have fingernails, just use the edge of your scissors and help it to pop up. Okay, so let's put that like that, and you can see how nicely that's coming together. And the next thing I want to do is I have a piece of the new shiny real red ribbon. So we're going to make a nice bow out of this. to put at the bottom of the wreath. Get a little bit longer tail there. Okay, I want to make sure the shiny part is always on the outside. Kind of twisting that a little bit. And just making the loops a little bit smaller. Okay, now come on. There we go. And again, just making sure everything is nice and even. And then pulling that tail to tighten that. Okay, so now we have a nice bow. Can go ahead and snip the ends. And we'll just use a couple of glue dots to put that right on the bottom there. Now a lot of people just use one glue dot. I err on the side of caution. Just my own little idiosyncrasy, I guess. And I usually put 2 dots on here, right where the knot is. And we'll just go ahead and put that about like that. Okay. So now the other thing we can do to jazz this up is use some of these cherry berries and pearl berries. And I'm going to use the triple ones here on some of these, on some of the bigger, make sure I'm getting all those, there we go. You can kind of tell when you're looking at this in person where the berries would go. There's a little indentation of the embossing, I guess you'd say. So put one there, one at the bottom here, and then we have some single ones that we'll use on the smaller areas. Let's see, maybe one there. And you can go ahead and use as many as you want or as few as you want. If you prefer sequins, you could do sequins. I think we need one right about here. Okay, so that kind of is the front of the card. Now, as I said, if you happen to have the October 2025 Paper Pumpkin add-on, there's a die for this joy that you can put there. If you don't happen to have it, the Jolly Holly bundle has this one. So this is the one that I have on my sample. Okay, and this one, I'm going to go ahead and put that one here and save the other joy for something else. Now, I like to put this up on dimensionals, and as you can see, this is pretty thin. So we need to cut just some little tiny pieces here of the dimensionals and kind of stick them here and there to make these stand up a little bit. One over the O. Let's see. Again, just a little narrow piece is all you really need. So one like that. Push that over so it doesn't show from the front. And I think I want to put one little tiny piece on the top of that little Y there so that that doesn't get smushed. Now, as you can see, this is really a tiny piece. So it's a little bit tedious to do that, but it only takes a minute. And then you're assuring that it turns out nice. Okay, so I have some dimensionals on there, and I'm just going to go ahead and lay that down in the center of the wreath, and there we have it. Isn't it pretty? I just love the way this turned out. I like wreaths anyway. I've always had a thing for wreaths, even as a kid. So I loved using these holly leaves to make that wreath. So for the inside, what I'm going to do, again, is just stamp those pretty leaves. I'm sorry, I said leaves, I meant wreath, meant bells that we used on the wreath. And again, stamping that in Versamark, putting that up in the corner, and we're going to heat that. Okay, it looks like that's all melted. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but sometimes when you heat up things with your heat tool, it makes the paper warp just a little bit. So if it is warped like that, what you can do is just heat it on the other side. And that kind of helps it to lay a little bit flatter. Okay, so again, I'm just going to color the bow and the little stripes on the bell with dark real red Stampin' Blend marker. And of course, if you prefer other colors, you can always do that. I just kind of like traditional Christmas colors. So I like the reds and greens and gold. Although I will say I do like some of the cards in blues and silvers as well. Okay, and we're going to make the clanger with dark Daffodil Delight. And then the rest of the bell with light Daffodil Delight. And then you can put in whatever sentiment you like for the inside. Now on my sample, I stamped it in Versamark and then used gold embossing. Let me show you. Like this. Okay, which is very nice. But I think for this one, I'm going to do something just a little bit different and use real red. I'm going to use the same sentiment. It's kind of nice. It says bright and happy Christmas wishes. So I'm just using real red to stamp that. And I think actually I like this better than the gold embossing because it shows up real nice and ties right in with the red that we used on the bell there. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this in the card. And as you can see, Stampin' Blends does bleed through on your cardstock a little bit. So you always want to make sure that you have extra paper underneath in case it goes all the way through, because you certainly don't want that on your table. Okay, it is a permanent marker, so you don't want any of that marker to show up on your table or tablecloth or placemat or whatever you happen to have down. Okay, so there is the pretty card. What do you think? Close it down a little bit. There we go. And you can see the difference here. The only difference is the joy, the die that I used. Otherwise, they're the same card. And you can see how they look just a little bit different with the color of the holly leaves. Okay, now if you like, you can also put that little bell, that little set of bells right on your envelope and do the same thing. And it kind of signals to whoever's getting it that they're getting a really pretty special card from you. Okay, same thing, stamp with Versamark, heat it. Give that a minute to dry. Okay, and then we'll go right ahead and color. as we did before, the little stripe. And the bow. You can use either side of the marker, whichever you prefer. Something this small I usually use, which I did on the other ones I just stamped. I use the pen end. This is the brush end if you prefer to use that. Has a nice point to it. Okay, and then, yeah, we're going to use the pen end for these. The little clangers and the rest of the bell. Just a little bit lighter shade of the Daffodil Delight. Okay, so there is our pretty envelope as well. Okay, again, this is all made with the Jolly Holly bundle, which is current, and I believe it's it is in the mini catalog. So go ahead and play with that. Use those leaves to make wreaths or whatever you'd like. Thanks for watching. I hope to have another video up for you really soon. Bye-bye.